And two, and two, and two. Devices not connected. Live from Ohio.
What's up, everybody? We had some technical difficulties. Well, there's like
Yeah, yeah.
the way the interface is set up, our pictures are on the bottom and there's three dots. You can
Mhm.
disconnect from the three dots, but you can't reconnect from the three dots. You have to go back down to the bottom thing to connect. So
We could just remove ourselves from the stream and then add ourselves back in.
we can do whatever we want. We're grown adults.
Yeah.
So do whatever we want. We're not children anymore.
People watch
Welcome.
this, they're kind of like, do they know how to use their setup here at all? Like, it's
No, we do not.
223 episodes and we still
No,
have
we
no
do
idea
not.
what we're doing.
None. We have zero idea what we're doing. I
We
think
need
at
a
this
team of producers. We need a team of producers to do everything.
No. I think, in all honesty, at this point, I think we're just fumbling it through. Just hoping somebody out there will donate to our Patreon to help us sort of, figure it out, as it were. But what are you gonna
Ingrained
do?
Cyclist is in the chat room and he says, howdy, gents.
What's up, Ingrained Cyclist? How's it going, buddy? What is going on? Welcome. Episode 223, our Alchemy show. We actually did a previous episode on the Spreaker platform about alchemy, and it was fantastic.
That's right.
I really enjoyed it, by the way.
One of our better episodes.
Yes, I think that was a little bit later on, too, like maybe in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, it took us a while to build up there.
Now we're 223 episodes.
Yeah.
Not bad.
I'm feeling every episode of that 223.
I bet. You look every bit as old as 223 episodes.
Yeah.
So, yikes. Anyways, before we get any further, it is time to hit you with the best part of the show, and that is dad jokes.
It's time for dad jokes.
They say justice is a dish best served cold, because if it were served warm, it would be just water.
Yeah. That stabs you in the brain. That's what that does. It just gets you. It's just like, because you get it. And as soon as you get it quick. And then that's it.
Yep. That's it. Oh, it's meant to hurt. The dad jokes are meant to slowly remove many of our audience and host from co-host.
It's like the stasis scene from the Dead Space remake. It's a slow death. 100%. It's a very slow death.
Very slow.
Very slow.
Welcome, Leah. Leah's here, and Ingrained Cyclist in the Chatterooskies.
I know who that is, but I'm not going to out him on the stream.
Well, don't do that. Wouldn't be good at all.
I'm not going to do that.
Let that man have his secrecy.
His anonymity.
I think I know who it is, too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I know where he lives. I know where he works. I know where you sleep.
Well, that's not good. You probably shouldn't be looking at his bedroom window. It's a little... Anyways, we're going to get right into the show because I don't want this to turn into something weird.
That's a different kind of show.
That we do not partake in.
That's right. We don't do that kind of show.
Anyways, welcome on in. Episode 223. Next week, our episode 224 will be regarding the antediluvian period.
Ooh.
And that will actually be pre-recorded. So do not come into the chat thinking that we're live. We're actually going to pre-record it and then upload it on Friday. We're going to record it Wednesday for you guys, and we're going to upload it on Friday.
But you can still come into the chat room while it's playing because it'll broadcast live, and just pretend that we're seeing all your good, happy, fun comments.
And maybe one of us will be watching from an undisclosed location and commenting back. Well, you won't know until you're there, so make sure you're there on Friday. To give you guys a little backstory of alchemical history, it was actually the medieval forerunner of chemistry, and it was based on the supposed transformation of matter, be that metals, be that in a spiritual sense. Because alchemy itself, I was talking to my father earlier, and I said, we're doing the show on alchemy. And he said, what's that? And I had to just say turning lead into gold. and he instantaneously knew exactly what I was talking about.
He's a smart guy.
Because a lot of people don't know the full ins and outs of alchemy. I understand that. They're not running and teaching it in the classrooms like they used to when we were kids. So it's a little bit harder these days to get acquainted with alchemy. But once again, it was concerned particularly with attempts to convert base metals, not just lead, tin, sometimes I just totally went blank there for a second, but like tin and iron and things like that into gold. The main goal was to turn these base metals or materials, and it wasn't just metals, it was materials as a whole, into gold, or to find a quote unquote universal elixir. And things like that, like universal elixir meaning immortality. You'll see that a lot of scientists from these periods, especially the predated times, like the Arabic, because the Arabs are the ones who really took hold of alchemy and started writing whole letters and manuscripts and everything else on alchemy. We'll get to that a little bit later. But to actually pinpoint alchemy's real beginnings is kind of tough, and it's near impossible because nobody truly knows where alchemy actually came from. Now, it is known as the secret art of the land of Chem, which is Egypt, and it has roots in many ancient civilizations. So it's not just, okay, Egypt had it, but somebody gave it to Egypt. We'll get into that. Now, according to rabbis, the spiritual leaders of Judaism, they say that the angel at the gate of Eden actually gave Adam the mysteries of the Kabbalah and of alchemy. And he promised that when the human race had mastered the secret wisdom concealed in these alchemical arts, the forbidden fruit curse would be removed and mankind might enter into the garden of the Lord. Now, remember, if we go back to the Old Testament, go back into Genesis, we find that Adam and Eve were removed from the Garden of Eden because they ate of that forbidden fruit. What I thought was very interesting here, and I have a couple books based on alchemy and its history, is the notion that the forbidden fruit was actually a curse, a continuous curse, than just a action consequences type of thing. Like it's an ongoing curse that can be broken if one is instructed in the right way to go about it. So that part there kind of stuck out to me. When I do my research, I usually have a few things that really sticks out. And that right there, looking at it from a curse, more of a curse angle and less of a, okay, this is just straight up nothing but consequences. And the curse can be removed because most curses can be removed. So if you could remove the curse, and there's a way to do it, it's a good way to sort of go about it. The Chaldeans, the Phoenicians, the Babylonians were all well-versed in alchemical practices. Greeks and Romans also practiced the ancient science. And in Egypt, alchemy was actually considered a master science. In one account from Egyptian lore is that of, and we'll talk about this gentleman later on, is Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes was thought to be an enigmatic figure who sailed through the mists of time itself. He was thought to be immortal. Excuse me. And the Egyptians of that time actually viewed him as Thoth, the moon god and the patron of science, literature, wisdom, and invention. I always thought it was an early study of chemistry before we really understood it. A lot of alchemy is that. It is the basic understanding. That's just part of it. The notion that because you're basically working chemistry. You're taking metals and you're putting them together. You're separating things. On that level, it is very much chemistry. But it also goes deep into spiritual territory, and there's aspects and symbolism. There's whole murals and paintings that are designed to alchemical formulas, because what would happen, alchemists didn't want other people finding out their recipes, if you will. So the recipe would be locked behind a picture. For instance, one of my favorite symbolic paintings is a picture of Pythagoras, and all about him are different shapes, different mathematical equations. It's the same basic concept with alchemical pictures. You'll have like maybe a rabbit upside down bleeding, and the blood means one thing, the way the rabbit's paws are facing is a whole nother thing. And these were all Talak formulas because they believed that if a person knew how to use alchemy, they could use it for both good and evil. So a lot of alchemical sciences were kept hidden. But in its basic point, yes, it very much is chemistry because you're
and it's one of those things too. It's like how astrology eventually informed astronomy. Like astronomy, we wouldn't have astronomy if somebody didn't take it first from its spiritual ideals and things and do practical experiments with it.
Correct.
To them, they felt like, oh yeah, all this practical stuff is, the side stuff to what we're really trying to achieve with the soul and everything. But it helped advance us immeasurably. The same thing with alchemy. Alchemy led to so many advances in chemical science that at the time they were like, oh yeah, this is all good. This is great. We learned how to do this. We learned how to make gunpowder. We learned how to do this. But we're really trying to change the soul and we're trying to get this. And we're trying to get this. So all this is really kind of useless, but it's vitally important to us today as a science. So it's just an interesting little bit of like back and forth where one led to the other. It started out as something mystical and magical and led to a lot of practical advancements.
Now, like I said, the Egyptians view him as Thoth, who is the moon god, the patron of science, literature,
the
wisdom,
Ibis.
And invention. He carries with him this emerald tablet, right? It's his writings inscribed on a piece of emerald. If you guys have ever seen emerald, the green stone. And inscribed on this tablet were the principles regarding alchemy. Now, this thing was never found. Nobody's ever found it. Supposedly it was lost.
There have been claims that people have seen it, but nobody's been able to actually produce it. Like people have said, oh yeah, we thought it was here and we saw it and then it wasn't there and things like that. There's no concrete actual evidence that it existed despite a lot of stories.
Now, Alexander the Great supposedly procured this tablet and it actually helped him in conquering the known world at the time. However, Alexander was initiated in the mysteries because if we look at who Alexander was as a person, his teacher was Aristotle. And Aristotle was one of those people who was thought to be also initiated in the mysteries being the unknown occult sciences that a lot of people were not initiated in, but Alexander the Great was, and that is how he was able to go all the way to India. But India was a whole different region. India wasn't the same as Greece. It wasn't the same as Persia. India was hot. It was clammy. It was humid. And his people and him didn't know how to navigate that kind of terrain. And going after Raj Porus, who was the leader of India at that time, was hectic. I mean, you have people fighting on elephants. You have people fighting in different climates that weren't known in Persia, which would be modern day Iran, weren't known in Greece. You're running into a whole subcontinent of jungles of different priests, these Brahmin priests that were much like the Shaolin monks in the things that they could do that these soldiers, these Alexandrian soldiers, could not do. These Macedonian soldiers could not do. And so Alexander came into kind of a serious conflict. But by the time he got all the way there, he was a hardcore alcoholic. So he let the drink and he ended up getting sick from drinking, probably liver failure. And that's pretty much what took him out. Sorry to get a sidetrack there on the old Alexander the Great. One of my favorite historical figures is that gentleman there. Now, to really get into the source of alchemy, the ancient civilization of Atlantis has to be brought into this conversation. A lot of people don't talk about Atlantis much because they still can't find it. I have some theories on that now that I have seen parts of the Sahara that have a ring-like structure. We'll get into that at some point. We'll revisit Atlantis. We're going to be revisiting a lot of our older topics, not because we don't have anything to talk about, but because we bring new information to light for all of you.
And that's an idea kind of we had before, too. We always kind of said we were going to. So now's a good time to do it. We talked about Mothman. Well, I talked about Mothman last week. And here we're talking about alchemy. So if you have other topics from our past shows you guys want us to revisit, let us know.
And we will revisit those shows. Now, Atlantis was destroyed. And there's a plethora of what happens. Supposedly the crystals they had, they couldn't control them right. It blew the place up. Earthquakes, tidal waves, floods, however you want to claim it. The whole place was destroyed. Yes. Now, the Hierophants, now, for those of you who don't know what the word Hierophant means, it's an interpreter of sacred mysteries and arcane principles. They were of the fire mystery school. Very generic terms because you don't want to go overboard with it and clue people in, if you will. Not like a lot of our more modern day occult societies that are like a little bit heftier on the word end. But what they did is they bring this formula, the alchemical formulas, to Egypt, and it remained in Egypt and would gradually move on into Europe. Now, if you look where Egypt is placed in Africa, and you look at Atlantis and then bringing it to Egypt, there had to be some communication. And oddly enough, the notion that the flood happened is pointing to an idea that the Sphinx was there before the flood, that the Sphinx wasn't actually built by the Egyptians, that it was built by a precursor race, and it was built to survive the flood. The same with the Great Pyramid of Giza. Supposedly it was built before the flood happens. That's just something to go off on. Now, another legend states, this one to kind of combat the whole Atlantis Egyptian ideology thing, is that 200 angels who ascended the mountain were the first teachers according to the prophet Enoch. Now, if you don't know about Enoch, we've talked about him in past shows, but that's second Enoch. First Enoch is the Watchers and the prophecy of what happens to them. Second one is a little bit different. And then third, the Slavic texts get a little bit more over. So now we're going to get into Hermes Trismegistus. This man is an unknown but known figure. He was the inventor of alchemy, astrology, medicine, magic, and he was the founder of the Hermetic ideology. So every time you hear Hermetic, Order of the Golden Dawn, those type of societies, his name is always attached. Always. Now, he's also associated, obviously, with the Greek god Hermes, who was the god protector of human heralds, travelers, thieves, merchants, and orators, and as we stated previously, Thoth. The Trismegistus actually means thrice great, and it was said to come from the first minutes of a meeting of the Council of Ibis, which was a cult, held in 172 BC near Memphis, in an epithet of Thoth found at the Temple of Esna, which read, Thoth the Great, the Great, the Great. There you go. There is your thrice great. Now, Hermes Trismegistus was also thought to be Enoch, who was Noah's great-grandfather, who was taken and who would go on to be the Metatron of heaven. Now, the Metatron isn't really talked about in the Old Testament. That's more in Kabbalah and a lot of that other more esoteric Judaic teachings. It's also talked about in the Book of Enoch, which did not make the Old Testament. The Council of Nicaea kind of threw a lot of texts of the Bible out when they all met together because they wanted to put in what they thought was right, and then they took out what they didn't think was right. And a lot of those books were removed, Old and New Testament, and I have quite the collection behind me regarding those texts. So they found a lot of them, the Dead Sea Scrolls, different little bits and pieces of books here and there found in different locations throughout Israel. So check that out if you get a chance. And others say that Hermes lived during the time of Moses. And according to an early church writer by the name of Eusebius, Hermes wrote 36 books on philosophy and theology and 6 books on astronomy. Now, in 1453, a manuscript containing 18 short books attributed to Hermes were found in Greece and translated by Marcello Finicino, a scholar of the age. In Islam, he is thought to be associated with Idris, the prophet of the surahs 1957 and 2185. Goes on to say he was also thought to be one of the original founders of Freemasonry. And the old medieval constitutions actually refer to Hermes as one of the traditional founders of architecture and building trades. They go on to say that he found and deciphered one of the two great pillars made before the flood. And that's how they were able to do much of their building. DC was thought to be planned and created based on measurements from one of these two pillars. I'll definitely need recommendations on those books. I'm reading the Bible for the first time currently and would like to read what wasn't included. I can take care of that for you. I have quite the book collection about that behind me. So before the show's over, I will grab it and you can write down the titles. So yeah, definitely. I am reading the Literal Concordant Old Testament. It more matches up with the original translation. It's hard to, you can't find the original translation, or you can't find the original one, obviously, but it's very different in words, in the way the pattern sits. Parts are more lengthy, more of a description. There's actual translations from the Latin, from the Greek. So it's a little bit different. I have both the Old and the New Testament. My old is gigantic, and then my new is a little bit smaller. So, but yeah, I can definitely recommend that. And getting back into alchemy here, in 1612, hey, all love. It's all love. In 1612, Isaac Casaubon showed that the corpus hermeticum was only a product of the first few centuries of the Common Era. Because of this, many occult societies would refrain from referencing Hermes directly. You're going to have a lot of this in history on anyone that is over the top. You still have it today.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And that's why it's hermetic. And that's as far as they usually go. Like they call it the Hermetic Order of whatever, the Hermetic Lodge of whatever. But they don't, like, if you go in there and talk about them, they don't mention Hermes or any of his iterations directly in any of the opening stuff. So you never really know why it's called Hermetic unless you knew beforehand already.
Yes.
So it's an interesting little sleight of hand.
And that was their way to still keep him in the fold without looking like nut jobs. But you'll find that a lot of the orders of the Golden Dawn and things like that did some less than, I don't want to say reputable, but very questionable practices. Well, some of their members did questionable practices. Now, in 1875, we have the Theosophical Society founder, Madame Helena Blavatsky, states that the denial of Hermes' existence by historians was nothing more than a lie, and it was actually a cover-up to hide the actual idea that Hermes and his concepts truly existed. Now, I don't think we've done a full-on episode of Theosophy. Theosophy is a very rocky and weird system of thoughts and beliefs. Some say it has hints of, I don't want to say racism, but
it's based in a time, like it began in Germany. And it began in a time when Nazism was really starting to get the upper hand.
Right.
And it was based on a lot of the idea that there was a particular kind of person in the world who was inherently a better person than other people. And it just so happened that those people tended to be Nordic of a certain set of features. They didn't push it as far as it got to when it got to the whole Hitler idea that he was pushing forth about genetic cleansing and all that other kind of stuff. But they started with some of it, and they kind of informed part of his policy on it. And then later he turned on them and wiped them out as much as he could with everybody else. But it was, unfortunately, and that's what you get sometimes with some of these early societies too. They're so inclusive that they start to kind of being exclusive towards certain other kinds of people. So while they might not have been implicitly racist or sexist or whatever, they got there in time, unfortunately.
And it's more of a, when you look at stuff like this, you have to look at it in a time frame. You have to look at it at the time and everything was going on at that time. It's hard to look at like history is one of those things that it's hard to take our concepts and our notions and our thoughts of today and apply them to then. It's a lot of these things are more of a sign of the times and less of I don't know how to word it.
It's kind of like hindsight. Like, we think if we were in an earlier time frame that we would stand up for things, that we would do this and we would do that, and we'd be like, but if you grew up being told that all this stuff is fine, or that all this stuff is okay, or that, hey, you know what, this is what matters and this doesn't, you may not know the difference. Your modern self is informed a different way. Your modern self sees, oh, people abuse this kind of person. That's bad. We can't do that. Back then, your entire life from birth was around people saying, oh, yeah, we don't associate with those people because of this. And that's what it was. And
it was a very homogenous culture too. You didn't have people that looked different from you. Everyone shared similar features. You all spoke the same language. It was the same customs and mannerisms, and that was generational. It was a generational thing. So you had nothing but to apply it to everything else. You couldn't. There was no outside sources. You couldn't just go to the internet and look up other people in other countries. So it was more of an environmental aspect than it was this is a right and wrong thing.
And that's not to accuse, not to accuse, that's not to excuse it, because now we know better. But at the time, like, you can't, if somebody from your family tree was a jerkbag in the past, but they were raised because everybody was a jerkbag, you can't be like, that guy was a jerkbag, I'm disowning them from my family tree. That's kind of extreme, because they couldn't, in their mind, that's how it was. Nowadays, we do know better. So nowadays, we try to be more understanding and we try to be better people. And that's just how it is. You have to view history through the lens of, while yes, that's how it was then, it doesn't have to be that way now, rather than going back and trying to vilify all of history.
Or erase history, right, or do this and do that and say, we're not talking about it, or we're going to put these things away, or we're going to do this. It's more or less of saying we're still going to talk about it, but you can't look at what happened in 300, and it's something like 300 AD and apply it to 2023. People, if you went back right now to 300 AD with the stuff we have now, you would either be a god or you would be a demon, because they didn't know cameras, TVs, cell phones, none of that. So to take something like, and theosophy was just, it wasn't something that was overtly racist in a way that let's kill every undesirable person. That was a more Hitler extreme measure. This was saying there's a superior group of people, and that's just how it is. And once again, that was a lens of looking at it. It doesn't make it right, but it's looking at a lens of that time period, who was around, who was teaching, where did they get their information from, right? And you have that. So the theosophical movement is a very odd movement. It's got some interesting concepts and points, then it's got some very weird concepts and points. And I think we'll do a breakdown of it on one of these episodes. I think it'd be a good way for everybody, including ourselves, to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, because we can always learn a little bit more about these kind of sensitive topics too. Like,
of course,
that's part of, and I don't want to prop it too early. I'll prop it at the end of the show, but that's another reason for doing the Saturday show that we're doing now, because that gives me the chance to learn just as much as the people listening to the show are going to learn. And I like to learn. And it's about time probably I learned about some things that I didn't know before.
Same. I did that with Islam. Didn't know anything about it, and then started learning about it. So, and I got a show coming up with all, we're going to talk about all that. So don't worry. We got content for days and days and days.
Content.
I want you to be able to look like, oh, the boys are at it again. Oh, the boys are at it again.
Every day of the week, going to be something.
Maybe not every day.
Mostly.
Maybe not every day. Never too late to learn, ever. I learn new things every day. This alchemy thing was a whole thing. So that's good though. It's good stuff. So we're going to talk about the actual emerald tablets themselves. Now they were known as the Smaragdine tablet or the Tabula Smaragdina. And this is a compact and hermetic text taken from the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. So, because nobody ever found the actual Emerald Tablet he carried around, this is all passed down information. Nobody's ever found the tablet. And if somebody does find it, that'd be one of the greatest finds of our history. If somebody found that, that would corroborate a lot of things that Hermes talked about, and then would prove probably that he existed or somebody existed regarding that person, because Hermes probably wasn't a real person, but there was probably multiple people that sort of put their ideas in one thing, and then everybody just said, we'll collected it, we'll say Hermes wrote it. This way you can't get in trouble. If you don't write, if you're not attributed to the works, if it's a mess, nobody's going to say, well, it was him. They're going to make it this Hermes guy. I don't know who that guy is. So just something to think about. But it is regarded as the foundation of alchemy. And it first appears in a number of early medieval Arabic sources. Remember, Arabs took a lot of alchemy, a lot of magic, a lot of different ideologies and expounded upon them. Arabs were actually pagan before they were put into Islam, because a lot of the Arabic nations are Islamic. Almost, actually, matter of fact, all of the Arabic nations are Islamic. And the irony is that places like Lebanon, places like Saudi Arabia, magic is actually banned. I have a copy of the Shemza Makharif, and if I would have that in Lebanon right now, they would arrest me and probably execute me, because it is illegal. There have been cases that they have put out where politicians over there have used magic and jinn against other politicians. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you're dealing with a highly, highly orthodox Islamic society. So to them, anything that doesn't fit that mold is seen as heretical, even though there are multiple branches of Islam, Sufism being one of them. And that is a very mystical, oriented, esoteric aspect of Islam, but that's not practiced everywhere. I mean, you have the whirling dervishes, which spin so much that because of that, they supposedly get closer to God, because they sort of lose themselves in the rhythm, and that feeling becomes spiritual and supernatural. Another thing we'll have to get on to, maybe I'll do one of that for one of my episodes we got.
And it's interesting too. It's interesting that that we owe a lot to the Arabic world. Like our entire number system,
do. Yes.
Our number system is not based on the Greek and Roman. The Greek and Roman version is its own thing, but our modern number system is based on the Arabic, which is based on the base 60 format from Mesopotamia. Before that, they preserved that tradition. Now we have 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. All of that is from Mesopotamia into the Arab world, and the Arab scientists basically created that entire system. And it's just kind of, it's interesting how certain areas of the world have contributed so much. And now when we look at them, we know them only because of the war and the different like conflict that goes on there, and the various like abuses, like the everything that's happened in Afghanistan. Not to go into anything political, that's full stop. But you know, it's not getting any better there. It's only getting worse.
And the thing is, we are only told what our media wants us to know. We're not told about anything else that goes on there. We're not told about the daily lives of the normal people. We're only shown extremist views, and we're only shown the war-torn parts. I have friends who have been there, been to Afghanistan, been to Syria, all this, and they say, yeah, there's parts that do have wars, but most of it isn't like that. The people aren't like that. So it's just very different. And you have, like I said, once again, you have to look at this because they're people like we are. They're everyday people. There's probably two guys just like us doing a podcast in Arabic, you know, same two type concepts. But we tend to look at things like, oh my goodness, there's the extremism is high over here, but it's, it's and there's a lot of things that aren't good, but there's a lot of things that aren't good here. So you just really have to understand that and go into learning about stuff like this with more of an open mind and less of the news says this, so I have to be like this. Just some food for thought. But the Arabic world is really what saved, ironically, a lot of these alchemical texts, thoughts, beliefs, things of that nature. They really pushed science along, and to see the orthodox take over is very saddening, because I think there's a lot to explore over there that it would really be beneficial to the world. And maybe that's why a lot of the wars and stuff are fought over there, because of things like that. We've had some different cases that have popped up regarding things like giants, things like different treasures, things like the whole museums getting destroyed, tablets being destroyed, historical monuments being blown up, things like that. And, it's deep. It's deep. But getting back on topic here, our oldest source of the Emerald Tablets dates back to the late 8th or 9th century. And we have a little excerpt here that says, truth, certainty, that in which there is no doubt. That which is above is from that which is below, as above, so below. And that which is below is from that which is above, working the miracles of one thing, as all things were from one. Its father is the sun, and its mother the moon. The earth carried it in her belly, and the wind nourished it in her belly. As earth, which shall become fire, feed the earth from that which is subtle with the greatest power. It ascends from the earth to the heaven and becomes ruler over that which is above and that which is below. And that is an excerpt from the Emerald Tablets. Now, if we kind of break this down a little bit and kind of pull a little bit from it, the notion that's as above, so below, meaning spiritual planes, for one, you do one thing in the physical, it affects the spiritual. You do one thing in the spiritual, it affects the physical. And that was the key point of alchemy, was changing and creating from a lesser to a greater, whether it be from lead, a lesser metal, to gold, a greater metal, whether it be from death, the lesser physical, to immortality, the greater physical. Alchemy itself is all about transmutation. It's all about taking one thing that is imperfect and working to make it perfect. The archetype, if you will. The archetype being that one thing that is perfect that we seek to attain. My humanities professor said it best. Imagine the most comfortable chair in the entire universe, the most comfortable chair you could in your head. That is the archetype all other chairs aspire to be. Doesn't mean they'll get there, but it's what they aspire to be. And that always stuck with me. So when you see this, we have to understand that when you work in one aspect, it changes the other. So if you take lead and change it to gold, it loses the lead properties, but it gains the gold properties. And so it's the same with your well-being. If you work out, you're changing your physical body to a more perfect body. It doesn't mean you reach that perfect level, but it's just here to here. And alchemy as a whole was a science that was about perfection. It was about getting the most optimum result out of something, whether it be physical, spiritual. Yes, removing impurities, working impurities out. We talked at the beginning of the episode about how Adam was given the knowledge of alchemy from the angel at the Garden of Eden, and the angel said, if you learn this and you learn how to apply it properly, the curse of the forbidden fruit will be removed. Once again, a spiritual cleansing or a physical cleansing or a material cleansing. All of these things apply to make something better. The principle of alchemy, the aspect of alchemy itself. And according to alchemy, the universe was or is composed of 3 principles and 4 elements. Now, most of us know the 4 elements: earth, air, water, and fire. That's the physical. The spiritual is salt, mercury, and sulfur. So a lot of your alchemical experiments involved sulfur, they involved salt, and one of the greatest materials, mercury. A lot of people, when you think of mercury, you think thermometers. That's the first thing I think, is that's what's in thermometers, liquid mercury. But it was much more than that. Some people drank mercury. That probably wasn't the smartest thing you could have done. I believe Isaac Newton was drinking mercury. And they got real sick.
It's completely toxic. It's 100%. Very, very bad for you. So don't anybody think
don't go drinking mercury.
All of a sudden, like,
don't do that.
Don't do that at all. Don't even get contact with your skin.
Yeah, you can't.
It can get in through your skin.
Yes.
And it can harm you that way.
It can mess you up. Yeah, 100%. 100%. So don't do it. There's a public service announcement from guys at This Uncanny Earth. Don't drink mercury or let it get on your skin. This way nobody can sue us later on and say, well, they told us to do it. No, we did not. So if we break down the elements, earth, all solid matter is represented by earth. It is the structure of physical form and the form itself. Water, everything that is liquid is represented by water. In alchemy, it is the state of water or liquid state that energy is most often transmitted. It can also represent emotion. So if you take electricity, right? Electricity, water is a conductor of electricity. If you have a down power line and there's a puddle right there, don't step in the puddle, because the electricity will go through the water and will shock you to death. So don't do that. See, you folks out there are getting a lot of PSAs today because we're here.
Safety first.
Safety first. Air, everything gaseous is represented by air. Oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, all of that represented by air. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then finally, we have fire. Now, fire represents the purest energy. It is the most active of all of the elements. It can be creative, and it can also be destructive. So, for instance, people will burn their fields for better crops, better grass. I've seen it happen. But also, it can destroy homes. It can destroy businesses. So, fire is both creative and destructive. It cannot be directly united with water and earth because water obviously puts the fire out. And if you throw dirt on a fire, it will also put the fire out.
Smothers it.
Now, air, however, is 100% needed, because if you don't have oxygen for a fire, this is why when you start a fire, you don't want to make it to where the wind can get too much into it, but you need to make it to where enough oxygen goes into it to keep the fire going, to keep the fire bright. And that is why the presence of air is necessary in the soul. Fire and air. Yes, we're made up of fire and air. Now, getting into the principles, we have salt, which represents the body of a thing. It is the receptacle for the energies of mercury and sulfur. And this neutral energy resides in the salts of the material you work with in the lab, both soluble and insoluble. And salt contains the elements water and earth. The receiving of the influences of the soul, which are transmuted through the spirit, occurs through the element water. Sulfur is the male active energy of the universe. For us, it represents the soul. It resides in the essential oils of the material you work with in the lab. Now, if sulfur is the male, mercury is obviously the passive female energy of the universe, and it unites with sulfur to produce a manifestation, whatever that may be, meaning whatever you are trying to create. This energy resides in the alcohol of the material you work with. In order for the energies of life to transmit their influence into matter, mercury is needed. It contains the air of life and the water of matter. If you want to take this to a physical level, male and female come together, child. That is the most basic way I'm going to put it without this turning into a whole other type of episode. Now, let's kind of get into what is known as the prima materia, or the material that is required to create the Philosopher's Stone, which we will get to here momentarily. I almost said Mormon. I almost said momentarily.
Mormons is a whole other show.
That's a whole other show.
Let's do something like that different.
It's a whole other show.
Oh boy.
But it is also the formless base of all matter, similar to chaos, the quintessence, and aether. The concept of prima materia is sometimes attributed to Alexander's teacher, Aristotle. Now, Mary Ann Atwood used words attributed to Arnaldus de Villanova to describe the role of prima materia in the fundamental theory of alchemy. She goes on to say, via him, that there abides in nature a certain pure matter, which, being discovered, brought by art to perfection, converts itself proportionately all imperfect bodies that it touches. So you have this piece of the alchemical puzzle that is needed to create. You need this one thing as your base to create everything else around it. Now, some names ascribed to the prima materia are microcosmos, the philosophical stone, the eagle stone, the water of life, venom, poison, chamber, spirit, medicine, heaven, clouds, nebula, fog, dew, shade, and moon. There's a bunch more, but those were some of the ones that I had pulled. Now, to steamroll this into the Philosopher's Stone. Now, this thing is the mythical substance that is capable of turning all base metals, such as mercury, into gold. So you need the prima materia to fuse into the Philosopher's Stone. Then you need the Philosopher's Stone to create. It makes the catalyst that turns everything it touches into its purest form. Now, it will turn these base metals like mercury into gold or even silver. It is also known as the elixir of life, and it could be used for rejuvenation and ultimately immortality. Now, that was the interesting part of the Philosopher's Stone, is it could actually be consumed within the body. It wasn't just it wasn't just used for the base metals, but you could actually ingest it. And supposedly some folks ingested whatever this was, whether it was a solid, whether it was a liquid. The Philosopher's Stone could also mean a spiritual thing that you consume for spiritual immortality, not a physical immortality, but a spiritual immortality, a sort of refinement of one's beliefs, one's thoughts, one's feelings, because your feelings, your thoughts, your beliefs directly affect your physical frame. It has been proven in studies after studies about, people that meditate for long periods of time, what they can put their bodies through because they're of one mind and one common accord. People whose brains aren't, that's a whole different subject for a whole different day.
And just a quick note for anybody who wants to see some modern pop references to the Philosopher's Stone, the most recent one that I can think of, and I only know this because recently I've been playing a game. We've all been playing that wizarding game that you're not supposed to talk about.
With the magic.
And because of that, we decided to watch the first movie from that series that should not be named.
Can't talk about
my daughter. And it deals with the Sorcerer's Stone, which is the same thing. They say so in the movie that's what it does, and he has to keep it from the villain because the villain can use it to extend his lifespan and come back to life. So it's a concept that is still around today in modern times, and it's in our minds. Even if you don't hear a lot of places talk about the Philosopher's Stone, the idea of it still shows up here and there.
Yes, and also you can watch the anime Full Metal Alchemist, which also talks about the Philosopher's Stone and equivalent exchange. So go check that out too. It's good stuff.
Speaking of, since we're getting to the end of the show, we should probably prop some things.
Well, we're not done yet. I've got a little bit more to go, and then we can do the props.
A little bit.
You're rushing me. You're rushing me.
From the anime to the anime. That's all.
Well, we'll get into that. Let me finish what I'm talking about first, man.
Spit it out. Spit it out. Do it.
The earliest known written mention of the Philosopher's Stone itself is in the Chirurg Meta by Zosimos of Panopolis around 300 AD. Elias Ashmole, an anonymous author of the Gloria Mundi 1620, they claim it actually goes back to Adam, who acquired the knowledge directly from God. It was then passed on, and that was why your biblical patriarchs were said to live so long. And you have to wonder if that's also why your Sumerian kings list, those guys lived long periods of time. Now, it goes on to say that in like manner, the philosophers would have the quadrangle reduced into a triangle. That is, into body, spirit, and soul, which three do appear in three previous colors before redness. For example, the body or earth in the blackness of Saturn, the spirit in a lunar whiteness as water, the soul or air in a solar citrinity. Then will the triangle be perfect. But this likewise must be changed into a circle, that is, into an invariable redness, by which operation the woman is converted into the man and made one with him. And the century, the first number of the perfect, completed by 1, 2, having returned again to an unit, and in which is eternal rest and peace. Now, there's a lot there to break down, and we do not have the time to break that down. But I figured I would throw that out there. Now, a lot of you probably, it might have went over your head, but I'm sure some of you said the woman is converted into the man. But it's not a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing. It's the concept.
It's a joining rather than
like
it's a joining rather than like a gender switching kind of thing. So
it's taking concepts of one, joining with the other, and putting forth the prime elements. So there you go. There's a show on Alchemy. I hope you guys loved it. Now, please.
Now I lost all my thunder, but we have a lot of good programming coming up over the next week. Tomorrow, of course, we have the next episode of the Saturday Spiritualist, which I'm going to be talking about Wicca. I'm gonna try my best to present it well, because I've known a lot of people who said they were Wiccans, but I'm actually not particularly knowledgeable about the subject, and I'm gonna do my best to kind of talk about it, looking up what information I have. And I would love for people in the chat room to show up and be like, you're completely wrong, let me tell you what it is, and tell me what it is live on the air, so that I can actually like read your comments and educate myself just as much as I'm educating you. I'd love to do that. Sunday, we've got nothing going on. Monday, we will be reunited on the radio once more.
Y'all miss me. Y'all miss
for the Let's Talk About This podcast on Spreaker, and he's going to be with me, and we're going to be talking about anime. Yeah. Which is another thing that I just can't wrap my head around mostly. Like, I know so many people that love it, and I may be like 2 shows and a movie, and that's it. I can't get into it, so he's going to help me.
Son. I'm help him.
He's going to help me get into it, maybe, or not.
Meltdown. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about some cool anime concepts, and we're also getting some of my personal favorite shows. So I hope you guys are ready for some Gungrave talk, because Gungrave is amazing. But yeah, I hope you guys are ready for that. That's Monday. So we got Saturday, we got Monday, we've got Wednesday. So Wednesday, you guys won't be there, but we're going to be be recording the antediluvian period here on this Uncanny Earth. Please, by all means. And I'm thinking that taking my Sunday and putting my religious studies, I will be going over the big ones. I will be going over Christianity, Islam, and Zoroastrianism. I don't know if I'll get into Buddhism. I might get into Buddhism, but the names are very, very, they're hard to pronounce.
Lots of consonants.
There's a lot of consonants and very little vowels in a lot of those. So like he said, if you see me there, jump in the chat and help me pronounce these things and help me learn just a little bit more about Buddhism. Because I know, like, our dear departed friend, Todd David Anderson, was a Buddhist, and he would have loved to hear that episode. So yeah, I'll be talking about the Bible, and I'll be talking about the Quran and all the little mystical, magical things that go along with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi, the history of the Nag Hammadi, the all of it, the blood feud between one of the men and an outside gang that killed his father, and they had this big old blood feud, and it was wild stuff. We're going to be getting the history of that, but I'm going to be doing it from a teaching standpoint and not a conversion standpoint. So I want to make that clear. I don't want you guys coming in this thinking, oh, he's just going to preach to me the whole time and it's going to be a sermon. We're both going to learn, because the Old Testament is a history book and the New Testament is more of a guide to living life, living the way that God would want you to, and it's very alchemical, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of the church will not really say this, but the New Testament is very alchemical in the way it's presented, but a lot of stuff was removed. And that's why I will have the Nag Hammadi. We'll be talking about Gnosticism, which is a personal favorite of mine. We'll be getting into Tertullian, all of those people that really made that either good or bad or both. A lot of your church fathers really rained down on Gnosticism because they didn't like it. So we're going to be talking about the Marcionites and all of that amazing stuff. All I got to do is come up for a name. So you might catch me Sunday night. You might catch me. I'm not sure what time yet I'm going to be doing that or where.
We'll figure it out.
But I would like to do it to where you guys can see what I'm reading to. You can see the books that I have. We can all learn together. And please show up. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the This Uncanny Earth YouTube channel. That is www.youtube.com/@ This Uncanny Earth. I have that name. I got that name when they put tags. I jumped on that super quick as soon as I could, because there's another channel that's This Uncanny Earth. I think they only have like 4 videos.
Yeah, it's actually one like video broken up into 4 parts or something like that.
And it was UFO stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened to them. Like, hey, if you guys want to reach out to us and be on the show, be on the show. Also, do not forget to check out our Twitch channels. We do the gaming. I'm going to be doing some building. I got James Bond's DB7 Lego kit behind me on the floor. You guys can't see it. So I'll be building that at some point. Also, I'll probably put some puzzles together because I'm an old man. But it'll be cool. Come through, hang out. Those will be just real chill days. I got some good lo-fi, copyright-free music that I'll be playing in the background. As you notice behind me, what happened? The whole shebang changed. A little explanation of that. I had like some other posters up there. I didn't feel like that fit who I was as an uncanny person. Not that it was a bad thing or anything, but I just didn't feel like it fit the uncanniness of what we do. So now you got a little bit of uncanny stuff back there. You got the world map. You got the map of the United States. We have
America is absolutely larger than all those other countries. Don't let
because that's real life. America is the largest country in the world. That's why it's so large and this is so very small. We have a painting here by Leah, who was in the chat earlier. And we have some books. We have like Tutankhamun here. We've got some Time Life books of the old school era. Got a mask. Got some Valentine's bears. We got the sword. We got the cat versus pickle, which is kind of a cool little thing. We got the Flatwoods Green Monster, because what would this Uncanny Earth be without the Flatwoods Green Monster incident? Then we have books. Here's all my books. It's like that commercial. It was like that YouTube thing with the guy that had the Lamborghini. I don't know if you guys remember this, but he was like, here's my Lamborghini, Murcielago, but here's my books. And this is the books I used to get the Lamborghini. And I never saw him again. So that's kind of sad. And then right here is the Fallout Vault Boy mask that Les Odell got for me personally when he went to the Mothman Festival, and they were giving those out. It's a very rare thing. Not too many people have this.
A gift from Les Odell is 100%. Priceless. Absolutely.
And I got a whole, it wasn't just that. I got a Fate magazine from him that I read through. I got stickers. So go support WV Case. That is our good buddy, him and his son, Les and Justin. Good guys, great people. Y'all go support them. Also, I got more announcements. July 29th, I will be in Pennsylvania doing a presentation. I was coming home from getting food the other day. As many of you know, I literally put my Twitch on hold. I was like, I'll be back, guys. I got to get food. Luckily, we had Apple in there to do he's out getting food. He'll be back. And I got a call as I'm driving, and it was Bill Rigby. Now, guys don't know if you know Bill Rigby. I met him when I did let's see, I'm trying to figure out which one that was. That was either the last one I did in Pennsylvania or the first one. Because I've done 2 in Pennsylvania now. I did one about, now I'm drawing a blank about what I did it about.
What about May? You got something in May, don't you?
Yes, hold on. Let my brain figure all this out first. So May is the Bigfoot thing that's at the Morrill Fire Department. Guys, come check that out. That is in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. I will be there speaking, and then I will also be I forget the name of the place. It's a name, but I forget. And that will be on July 29th. And I'll be doing 2 separate presentations. So if you think you're going to one to get both, you will not be getting both. I'm doing one at one place and doing one at the other. Last year, I did 3 presentations, I want to say 3. I could have swore I did 3. Did I do 3?
I think so. 3. Well, you did at least 2, and I think 1 was canceled.
1 got canceled. Yeah. But I swear I did 3. I thought I did 2
more,
in Pennsylvania.
because you did several. Like, it was more than 1 at least. I know it was at least 2.
Had to be. Yeah, I did one in Morgantown, West Virginia. That was Les's one that I did with the Giants.
Yeah. And then I did another one at Fred's. You did one for Fred.
I could have swore I did 2 at Fred's.
You were supposed to do at least 2. I know the one got canceled, but I don't know if you did manage to do another one. But I know
if you guys know somebody out there that is looking for speakers, please send them my name, and let's get that going. My tummy is rumbling. I'm gonna have to eat. So
last things too.
Don't
forget Thursday, another episode of the Uncanny Spirits Club. And then I think that's it. I think that's our whole everything.
Also, go follow us on Twitch. This Uncanny. No, I changed it. It's just Uncanny Alchemist. So twitch.tv/Uncanny Alchemist.
Good thing you remember.
Do that. I'll go there. And then we have twitch.tv/DMRGN. DMGRGN. I don't know. I don't understand, bro. DMGRGN. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means. So anyways, y'all behave. And we'll be back with another live episode of This Uncanny Earth 2 weeks from tonight. So if you've been bad, we will know, and we will alert the proper authorities.
Like Santa Claus.
Saint Nicholas. And then you will only get Belschnickel. You will get Belschnickel.
We'll come wassailing to your house, and we won't leave.
No.
You better give us the wassail.
Better give us the wassail.
We ain't leaving.
Or we will be assaulting you. I don't know. There was something.
If you remember our Christmas episode from last year.
Those Christmas episodes are doozies every time we have one.
Oh, boy.
Anyways, y'all, it's time to get up out of here. So we hope you guys enjoyed yourselves. As always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see you folks next week. Peace.